This segment of Delmarva Life is sponsored by TidalHealth.
You know, for many women, just the thought of getting that annual mammogram can stir up a whirlwind of emotions, anxiety, embarrassment, fear of the unknown. They're all feelings that unfortunately often prevent women from getting that crucial screening. Well, our next guests are here to help you overcome those feelings. They did, and it saved their lives. We'd like to introduce to you the Vice President of Population Health at TidalHealth, Catherine Fiedler. Jill Stone is a TidalHealth Senior Director of Physical Medicine and Respiratory. Ladies, thank you both for coming in this afternoon.
Thank you.
I want to start off with you, Catherine. Both of you, I want to point out, are breast cancer survivors. Mm-hmm. And Catherine, your journey began with pain.
Yeah, I was newly at a gym working out, and after about 6 weeks the pain never stopped, and I thought, ooh, that's a little odd. So I called my PCP. I have a great relationship with her, and she said, you know, let's just get another mammogram. I know you had one. So I did that, and it was inconclusive, so they did a sonogram, something I'd never had before in that fashion, and it was okay, but still inconclusive. And we talked that night over the phone, and she said, you know, I'm not happy that this has continued, this pain, and that there's no resolution for it. You know, we had tried some other things. And so she scheduled me for an MRI, which I had never had before, an MRI of my breast. I thought that's kind of weird. Mm-hmm. And that came back with a whole lot of, you know, lit up areas that looked like tumors. So I went and saw Dr. Seckler, one of our local surgeons here, and he met with me and told me it was highly likely, given what he saw, that it was cancer, but he wanted to do a biopsy. So we got to have that conversation kind of early of what he thought it was, and a week later we did that, and it confirmed that it was cancer. I ended up having a mastectomy, ended up with chemotherapy, but yeah, it was a bit of a different journey than many women with just a positive test, and it took a little extra testing.
So, a longer journey, getting the screening done and everything. How was that on you emotionally?
You know, first thought was my daughters. I'm a mom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's always, I get all choked up thinking about them. But mostly it was the waiting, you know, and I see that as a nurse in healthcare. I see that it's so hard. You say, oh, one more test before we can decide something, and you have to wait. Whether it's a day or a week or a month, it's too long because every fear is running through your head. But it was part of the process and part of what you just have to tolerate. You can't do everything right on top of each other. So I think the waiting was the hardest. Once I had a plan, then I could be strong, and then I could move through that. But it was an absence of a plan. I was struggling a bit.
Yeah. And of course, physically, those tests aren't all great.
They are not. And every time, what gets me through the day is being able to walk, you know, for my mental health. So I'm like, will I still be able to walk? Will I still be able to walk? And I even chose the mastectomy that I had to not touch my belly so that I could continue to walk. Like that was kind of how I got through things.
And you say that this whole experience kind of increased your passion for primary care and prevention.
It did. So I was able to have a ride or get my own ride to all these tests. I was able to understand what was going on because of my healthcare knowledge. I do have good insurance. You know, I work for a healthcare provider, so I had some things that I know not everybody does, but I also knew it began with that relationship with my primary care doctor. And because of that relationship and being able to say, hey, I'm worried, and have a thoughtful conversation, she listened.
So how are you today?
I am fabulous. I am cancer-free. I still have to follow up and, you know, go for annual testing and semi-annual testing and see my oncologist, but I am great.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful to hear. Now, Jill, your journey is a little different. You had said it wasn't a matter of if, but when.
Yes, I always had in the back of my mind that I don't know why, I have a family history of breast cancer. My grandmother, her sister, their mother. So I kind of just knew it was coming. I started getting my annual mammograms when I was 35. And when I was 43, I got my routine screening, and they asked me to come back, and I went back, and then kind of like Kathy, I had to go get an ultrasound, and but I think I was prepared to hear it. I don't know if you can ever say you're prepared to hear that you have cancer, but I kind of knew it was coming because I had that family history. However, I did get the BRCA gene testing, and it was not genetic, so that was a little surprising.
Yeah.
But I think I was just waiting for the year that I got my mammogram, and I was waiting to hear that I had it.
And how are you today?
I'm doing great. I just hit my 5-year mark, which is a huge milestone in the world of breast cancer. So that was actually July the 9th was my mastectomy 5 years ago. So I'm doing great as well.
So what would you say to the woman who does have that fear of getting a mammogram?
I think that you can't get treatment if you don't know, obviously. So the first step is finding out that you have a concern. But if you're concerned, take a friend, phone a friend, call Kathy or I. We'll go with you. Find somebody that is going to be your support person and is willing to go with you. And if you can't find that, certainly call Kathy or I. We'll go with you.
Okay. Well, Catherine and Jill, thank you for sharing your stories, and hopefully you inspired someone out there. And but we're not going to let you go quite yet. We're not done with you yet. You can see why they are on a mission to expand services that will help with early detection. We'll learn about those efforts as Delmarva Life continues next. We're hearing some powerful stories today in an effort to encourage you to go ahead and schedule that mammogram. We are back with TidalHealth's Catherine Fiddler and Jill Stone. Welcome back. And before we heard their stories, and thank you again for telling your very, very personal stories. We touched on the fear that can prevent women from getting the mammograms, but there are other barriers as well. What are they?
I mean, it's enormous. So take all of us. You have a job, you try to get your kids to daycare, you need to also schedule tests, but your child needs support. You have to show up at school. Oh, and then by the way, I also take care of my aging parents. So, you know, at the end of the day, women definitely don't put themselves first. So fear is big, but oftentimes it's just prioritizing everyone else in your life over yourself and trying to figure that out. And so we know, you know, right now in Salisbury, you can get a mammogram, you can in Berlin, up in Seaford, but the shore is very large. That's a long ride for many people. If I live in Pocomoke and I need to come up to Salisbury and then drop off somebody at school and then also maybe an aging parent, check in on them, when am I going to have time?
Right.
And so that's one of the biggest barriers we have today.
Yeah, yeah. And then, are you seeing any impact on those barriers? I mean, with TidalHealth, or?
We are, and if you look at, so we do every 3 years we do a community health needs assessment, and it looks at rates of preventive screening to include mammograms. And we know that less than 80% of the women on the shore get their mammogram every other year, and we know it's recommended more frequently than that. So just that alone, and then we're finding women with cancer at higher stages of cancer. So because they don't get that mammogram sooner, they're not getting the results sooner and able to get that treatment so that they can then live long and healthy lives.
Yeah, and I mean, time is important in any kind of a diagnosis. So in an effort to overcome these barriers, TidalHealth is putting together an effort to get a mobile mammogram.
Last year, actually, we kicked off the fundraising for the mobile mammogram with an employee campaign, and we were able to raise $125,000 toward the $1 million goal for a mobile mammogram just with contributions from our employees, which is a huge win. I think it says a lot for the staff at TidalHealth to contribute their own money towards something that's so important to women and men in our community.
How will it work, and where will it go?
Yeah, so the goal is that it won't be in Salisbury and or Berlin. It's going to be in those places on the lower shore, up in Delaware, Western Sussex, where women have lack of access. It will be for preventive screening only. But the important part is we're going to also work not to just do that one test, but make sure people have health insurance, make sure they're connected to a PCP, make sure that they have the follow-up so that they know that the results were negative and to follow back up next year, or perhaps they were concerning and then what are those next steps. So it's really all-encompassing to be a true population health van that can really take people throughout the continuum of care and start getting them connected to any care that they might need.
So how will it work? I mean, will it show up at workplaces, at schools?
I think the location still be determined. We're about a year, 18 months out. But what it's really about is I know that it's coming tomorrow somewhere in my neighborhood, and I'll be able to call and schedule an appointment. Also explaining, do I have health insurance? Who's my primary care provider? All that other necessary information so that we can follow up. And then when I get on the van for that appointment, we will have community health workers, we will have nurses, we'll have other folks. So not only the testing that will happen on that van, but then that necessary follow-up.
Right. Follow-up is important. Okay, so you had mentioned that employees from TidalHealth contributed. Can the general public contribute as well?
Yes, absolutely. We actually kicked off the community campaign a couple of weeks ago in Ocean City. We're working with partners in the community. Anybody can contribute. The campaign the goal is to raise $1 million. So you can donate at TidalHealth.org. There is a link to the foundation, and if individuals can donate as well as companies can contribute as well.
I think it's going to be an invaluable asset on Delmarva. Catherine and Jill, thank you for coming in and telling us about this. We're going to bring those numbers down, aren't we?
Absolutely.